Once upon a time in the bustling market, nestled among the stalls and chatter of vendors, lived a mysterious figure known as the Silent Braider. Her presence was as enigmatic as her skill with braiding hair, a talent that soon became the talk of the village. One crisp morning, the villagers arrived at the market to find her seated in a quiet corner, diligently weaving intricate patterns into a woman's hair. They were captivated by her silent dedication, for none had ever seen her before and none had heard her speak a word. Thus, the villagers dubbed her the Silent Braider, believing her to be deaf and mute, adding an air of mystique to her already mesmerizing craft. From her very first day at the market, a line of eager women snaked its way towards her, drawn by whispers of her exceptional artistry. She braided with a finesse that seemed to imbue not just beauty, but a touch of magic into each strand. Soon her corner became a hub of admiration and envy alike among the other hair braiders who watched, resentful as their own clientele dwindled in favor of the Silent Braider's spellbinding work. One night, Amina, a curious braider plagued by intrigue, decided to linger past dusk to unravel the mystery surrounding the Silent Braider. With stealth and patience, she waited in the shadows, hoping to trail her back to her abode once she completed her day's work. However, despite her vigilance, exhaustion eventually claimed Amina, and she slipped into a deep slumber. In her dreams, she witnessed a startling scene. The Silent Braider amidst a tumultuous crowd, her voice resounding in a frenzy directed at figures locked within a cage. Amina awoke trembling, recognizing familiar faces among those trapped souls, faces of villagers whose hair had recently been touched by the Silent Braider's hands. Confused and alarmed, Amina attempted to warn the villagers the next morning, but her fears were dismissed as mere jealousy, leaving her isolated in her unease. The weight of her unsettling dream plagued Amina, casting shadows over her once confident demeanor. Faced with the stark reality of her diminishing clientele, she made a somber decision to relocate to a neighboring market, seeking solace from the Silent Braider's overshadowing presence. Meanwhile, the queue for the Silent Braider continued to swell, drawing in Kaya, a newcomer to the village, whose search for a skilled braider led her to the bustling market. Perplexed by the long line gathered before one solitary figure, Kaya hesitated, but eventually joined, eager to experience the famed artistry herself. As the Silent Braider worked her magic on Kaya's hair, a drowsiness overcame her, pulling her into a dreamlike state. In her dream, Kaya found herself ensnared within the confinements of a cage, a captive to the Silent Braider's inexplicable power. Frantic and desperate, she fought against unseen forces, eventually breaking free with a jolt that startled her awake. Panic gripped her as she gazed into the mirror where a haunting visage loomed behind her reflection, sending Kaya into a frenzy of screams that pierced the serene market ambiance. Startled bystanders looked on in confusion as the Silent Braider vanished into thin air, leaving behind a palpable aura of fear and bewilderment. Kaya struggled to articulate her harrowing experience, revealing visions of an ominous entity, weaving dark threads into their lives through the innocuous act of hair braiding. Examining a wooden comb left behind by the Silent Braider, Kaya discovered cryptic symbols etched upon its surface, prompting her to seek counsel from a renowned local sage. Recognizing the symbols as sigils of an ancient malevolence, the sage warned Kaya of a curse that befell those whose hair had been touched by the comb, a curse that wrought anguish and misfortune upon its unwitting victims. Determined to lift the curse, Kaya embarked on a quest to trace the comb's origin to its first usage in the village. Her inquiries yielded little, save for fragmented memories and hushed whispers that hinted at the Silent Braider's arrival and the transformative impact she had upon the village's fortunes. Frustrated and fearful, Kaya retreated to her home, only to find herself haunted by a sense of impending doom. A chilling knock upon her door shattered her fragile calm, and she cowered in silence as a spectral figure, pale and ethereal, slipped through an open window. "Who are you? How did you enter my home?" Kaya's voice quivered as she confronted the intruder, who introduced herself as Layla, the very first victim of the Silent Braider's curse. Layla recounted a tale of woe and despair, of a life torn asunder by illness and abandonment, all traced back to the fateful day she entrusted her hair to the Silent Braider's touch. Realizing their shared plight, Kaya convinced Layla to join her in seeking aid from the sage, a powerful seer whose knowledge spanned the arcane and the mystical. Together, they presented the comb to the sage, whose solemn gaze pierced through the veil of darkness, ensnaring their village. Uttering ancient incantations and enacting solemn rites, the sage took up the comb with a steady hand and focused mind. Each deliberate movement served to loosen the tightly bound braids that connected Layla to the malevolent spirit. With every gentle stroke, the comb seemed to pulse with a latent mystical energy, causing the dark entity to writhe in discomfort and gradually disperse into the ether. As the ritual unfolded, the oppressive grip of the spirit on the village began to fade, allowing a profound sense of relief to settle over the once troubled community. As dawn broke, the village of Olu rejoiced in newfound liberation, freed from the shadow of the Silent Braider's curse. The market buzzed with renewed vitality as other braiders reclaimed their clientele, and the once dimmed spirits of the villagers soared with gratitude and relief. The tale of the Silent Braider left a lasting impression on the villagers of Olu, serving as a cautionary parable that resonated deeply within their hearts. It warned against the dangers of blindly embracing trends, without considering their origins or potential consequences. The villagers learned firsthand that what appears beautiful on the surface can hide malevolent intentions beneath, symbolized by the mysterious symbols etched on the Silent Braider's comb. This story emphasized the importance of discernment and critical thinking, urging everyone to question the unfamiliar and trust their instincts when faced with uncertainty. It became a guiding principle for the villagers in navigating life's complexities, encouraging them to look beyond appearances and seek understanding. Kaya and Layla emerged from their ordeal as symbols of resilience and courage. Their determination to confront the dark forces that threatened their village not only liberated them from the curse, but also paved the way for healing and renewal within their community. Their actions demonstrated the power of unity and the resilience of the human spirit in overcoming adversity. As they reflected on their experiences, Kaya and Layla vowed to cherish the lessons they had learned. They valued the importance of knowledge gained through hardship, recognizing it as a beacon of light in times of darkness. They celebrated the strength found in solidarity, understanding that together they could overcome any challenge that came their way. And above all, they embraced the enduring power of hope, which had sustained them through their darkest moments and now guided them towards a brighter future for their village. In the end, the tale of the Silent Braider served as a reminder to the villagers of Olu of the value of wisdom and the resilience of the human spirit. It became a part of their collective consciousness, inspiring future generations to approach life with caution, discernment, and unwavering courage in the face of adversity.